Hi children, good morning. This is Karpagachelvi from DHSS. I hope you and your family members are all safe and fine with the grace of God. Today we are going to see about the third section of the lesson when the trees walked.
Now, let's look about the author Ruskin Bond. Ruskin Bond is an award winning Indian author of more than 500 books, short stories, essays, and novels. He writes poetry and books for children as well as adults. He lives with his adopted family in Landour in Missouri, India. He was awarded the Padma Shri in 1999 and Padma Bhushan in 2014.
Before we get into the session, I want to ask some questions for you children. Do you all like trees? Do you all want to plant a tree? I hope you are all saying yes.
Okay, let's see what's happening in the third section. The monsoon season was the time for rambling about. At every turn, there was something new to see. Out of the earth and rock and leafless boughs, the magic touch of the rains had brought life and greenness. You would see the broad leaved vines growing. Plants sprang up in the most unlikely of places. A pupil would take root in the ceiling. A mango would sprout on the window sill. We did not like to remove them, but they had to go if the house was to be kept from falling down. Children, I think you all enjoyed the monsoon season. It's nice to see. In that season, we could see the rains had brought greenness. We could see the broad leaved vines. People take root in the ceiling. A mango would sprout on the window sill. But if they had to go, it damaged the building. If you want to live in a tree, that's all right by me, said grandmother crassly. But I like having a roof over my head, and I'm not going to have my roof brought down by the jungle. Then came the Second World War, and I was sent away to a boarding school. During the holidays, I went to live with my father in Delhi. Meanwhile, my grandparents sold the house and went to England. 2 or 3 years later, I too went to England and was away from India for several years. But the grandma did not like to grow the trees because the trees damaged the building. She angrily said, I like to have a roof over my head, not by the jungle. Second World War came, so he sent away to a boarding school. In the meantime, his grandparents sold the house and went to England. 2 or 3 years later, he too went to England. Some years later, I returned to Dehradun. After first visiting the old house, it had not changed much. I walked out of town towards the river bed. It was February. As I looked across the dry water course, my eye was immediately caught by the spectacular red blooms of the coral blossom. In contrast with the dry river bed, the island was a small green paradise. When I went up to the trees, I noticed that some squirrels were living in them, and a koel, a crow peasant, challenged me with a mellow, Who are you? Who are you? Some years later, he returned from England to Dehradun. Children, do you all remember? What does he refer? Here, he refers to the author. Okay, children. Now, let's get into the lesson. When the author returned from England to Dehradun, the old house had not changed much. He walked towards the river bed. There was the spectacular red blooms of the coral blossom. The island was a green paradise. Some squirrels, a koel, and a peasant were living in the trees, and they were looking at him and asking him like, Who are you? Who are you? But the trees seemed to know me. They whispered among themselves and beckoned me nearer. And looking around, I noticed that other smaller trees, wild plants, and grasses had sprung up under their protection. As the trees we had planted long ago had multiplied, they were walking again. In one small corner of the world, grandfather's dream had come true. He noticed that the trees they had planted long ago had multiplied. So he found that grandfather's dream had come true. This is what the today's session we have learned. Now let's see the glossary. Rambling, wandering, sprout. When seeds begin to grow into small plants. Spectacular, eye-catching, beckoned. To signal someone with your hand to ask the person to come closer or follow.
Now let's see the question answers in section 1. Discuss and answer. First question. When did the garden become a happy place for the author? The garden became a happy place for the author when he was in the company of the grandfather. Second question. What are the two reasons the author gives for the plants moving towards grandfather? The two reasons the author gives for the plants moving towards the grandfather are the following. First, the plants wanted to be near grandfather. Second, and the plants wanted light and warmth. Third question. Why does the writer think that the people tree is a great show off? The author thinks that the people tree is a great show off for their leaves spin like tops even when there is no breeze. It attracts one's attention and invite one into the shade. Now, section 2, discuss and answer. First question, why do we need trees? List 4 reasons that grandfather gives. We need trees for getting rain, breeze, and to prevent soil erosion and get pure oxygen. Grandfather says that we plant trees for the forest and for the animals and birds who need more food and shelter. We plant trees to keep the desert away, to attract rain, to prevent the banks of rivers from being washed away, for fruit and flowers, leaf and seed.
Children, we can observe the answer for this question from the picture.
Second question, why did the author help his grandfather plant trees? The thought of a world without trees frightened the author, and so he helped his grandfather. Third question, what made grandfather plant saplings on the rocky island? The author and the grandfather, while visiting a small rocky island, saw a small mango tree growing. This incident made grandfather plant saplings on the rocky island. Section 3, discuss and answer. First question, what did grandmother feel about trees growing in the house? Grandmother did not feel happy about trees growing in the house, for she feared that the house may fall down. Second question, why did the author leave town? The author left town to continue his studies at a boarding school. Third question, how did grandfather's dream come true? The trees the author and the grandfather had planted long ago had multiplied. The grandfather had a dream to have a big forest and it was actualized. Fourth question, describe what the author saw when he went back to the island. The author saw the island completely changed into a small green paradise. He saw some squirrels, a koel, a crow peasant to whom he seemed to be a foreigner. The trees seemed to know him, whispered among themselves, and invited him to come nearer to them.
That's all, students. Here I have given the homework. Try to do the homework and submit it on time. Thank you. Bye. Take care.